On the stage, Shiv Prasad Garu, Director of a very young lab of DRDO. On the stage, Professor B.S. Murthy Garu, Director of IIT Hyderabad. Naresh Indian Garu, who has arranged this very nice function. All the teachers, parents, students. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to be with you today on this particular occasion in remembrance of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. I should tell you, in this audience there are not too many people who have had the fortune of meeting Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam himself, but I was one of those fortunate ones where I met him at least 3 times in my career. All the 3 times, Dr. Kalam was the Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India. Twice he was Principal Scientific Advisor, once he was the President of India. And all the 3 times, the occasion was in Hyderabad. So I was very proud that while I was in Hyderabad, that Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam came here and I had a chance to meet him. And you would have heard the stories, but I can tell you from personal experience how simple and how humble a man he was. He had no inhibitions to talking to then about 20 years ago, when I was a very junior scientist, to someone like me with his arm on my shoulder and asking, what do I do? What kind of work I do? And he had that knack of talking to everyone. Very, very simple, very inspiring. He would tell us stories of how he converted DRDO into such an organization. He would tell his stories about his association with Vikram Sarabhai and Satish Dhawan and so on and so forth, and how he learned from them, took inspiration from them to convert DRDO into what it is today. And you're going to hear more about it today afternoon from Satish Reddy Garu when he comes here. And truly inspiring person. What I want to do in memory of Dr. Abdul Kalam, I want to recall some stories of India's science and technology that have brought us here what we are today, and we'll start our journey from 1947. All right? Now when I say that, I was not born in 1947 myself, I was born in 1962, much later. And I don't think there is anyone in the audience here who was born in 1947 or earlier. But even then, if I tell you that, do you remember how life was 10 years ago? Most of you will not actually remember what life was. 10 years ago, we did not have smartphones with us, right? We did not have smartphones 10 years ago, and we don't remember how we used to communicate with each other 10 years ago. When I was a student in IISc Bangalore, and Professor B.S. Murthy Garu also was a student at the same time, there were no mobile phones. There were no mobile phones, there were only landline. And to talk to our parents, we had to go to a telephone booth, book a trunk call, wait for 2 or 3 hours for the trunk call to mature, and after 3 hours, all of a sudden, the telephone operator would tell us that your turn has come, and then we would go and speak to our parents for 3 minutes. You know, trunk call was 3 minutes. So if we wanted to talk to anyone, my parents were in Nagpur, I was in Bangalore, we used to wait for 3 hours for the 3 minutes call, you know. And a 3 minutes call used to cost us quite heavily. But we don't remember that. We can just recall today that how life was. In 2001, some of you probably were not born in 2001, my wife came from Chandigarh to Hyderabad in search of her job. And she was looking for a job in a private company, and the private company gave her a mobile phone. In 2001, we did not have mobile phones. I did not have one, nor many of my friends had. In my family, she was like a heroine. She used to carry a mobile phone with her that she could talk from anywhere. Wherever she went, she could talk to us. We all had only landlines. We don't remember that. You know, today the life has changed so much that we actually have a hard time recalling how life was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. When we are growing up as students in school, slightly younger than what we are today, in all our households, the entire Indian middle class households, we used to go and stand in the line at 5 o'clock in the morning to get half-liter milk for the family of 4. All of us stood in the line to get half-liter milk for the family of 4. We used to go to ration shop to get our wheat, and then we used to go to flour mills to convert that wheat into wheat flour. If we were not in the queue at 5 o'clock for milk, that day family of 4 would not get milk. Sweets used to be made in the house only on Dashera and Diwali. Sweets were not available in the market as they were today. We would get a new shirt or a new pant only on Diwali. We could not go to the market easily and get a new shirt or new pant for ourselves. Remember, I was just little younger than what you are today. And that was true for entire India. I am not talking of my family. I don't think that would be false for any of this. All of us, this is true, that is how India was when in our schools. Right? So when we go back to 47, it's even more difficult to imagine how life was in 1947 and how science and technology changed the life. How the generation of scientists and technologists work hard to change our lives that we can sit here in a comfortable hall which is air conditioned, all of us together, and I can speak from here and somebody at the back can hear me. Let us recall that. When the British came here in late 18th century, India's contribution to world economy was more than 25%. More than 25% contribution to world economy come from India. Today, there are not too many countries which contribute 25% to the world economy. Even US and China have slightly less contribution to world economy today. So India was what US is today in the late 18th century. India was even better than that. What you see today, US, Canada and all, India was better than that in the late 18th century. When the British were living, 5 years before that, there was a great famine in India. It had not rained for a long time. The agricultural produce was not there. 1943, 4 years before independence, 10 to 30 lakh people, 10 to 30 lakh people died because they did not get food to eat. There was no food. There was no food available. What do you do? People died because of hunger. That was 1943. So 1947, when India became independent, all the world said that India cannot survive as a country and someone will have to come from outside and once again rule over India. That was the impression that was given all over. And that's where we have to thank our forefathers, people like Vikram Sarabhai I already mentioned, people like Homi Bhabha, people like C.V. Ramans, and of course later on people like Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who made India what it is today. Our first challenge in 1947, we said that we are going to be a democracy, right? We say that the model of governance is democracy. How do you make sure that every person can get to vote, every eligible person can go to a voting booth and vote? There are a lot of people who can actually go and simulate other person or impersonate someone else and vote. We said that every eligible voter has a right to vote and would go to the voting machine and vote. India developed that ink. Have you people have had ink on your finger? Have you people voted any time in the elections? None of you has ever voted? Have you seen the ink that is put on your finger? That ink was developed in CSIR, my laboratory in Delhi. In 1950, the first general election, we developed that ink that is used even today. And every election since then, the ink is used even today. Not only that, that ink is now exported to 27 different countries. That ink now ensures that every eligible voter can go and vote and exercise the right, his or her right to vote. India was still a hungry country. We did not have our food to eat. 1965, we were looking at another 1943 like famine. It had not rained for last 3 years in 1965. What would India do? India begged to US that please give us wheat, please give us rice. India went with a begging bowl to the United States in 1965. That's where through the PL 480 program, United States sent lot of wheat to India. Wasn't that embarrassing? It is at that time Indian scientists decided that this is going to change. We are not going to beg to any other country forever in future, 1965. Norman Borlaug had developed a small variety of wheat, a dwarf variety of wheat. Because agriculture takes a lot of water, we decided that we are going to construct dams and make irrigation possible. And a lot of people work with their own hands. Our farmers used to work with their own hands. We decided that we are going to mechanize agriculture. And with that in mind, M.S. Swaminathan brought Norman Borlaug to India, he and C. Subramaniam, the then agriculture minister. M.S. Swaminathan and Subramaniam brought Norman Borlaug to India, brought the small variety of wheat. We had already constructed dams like Bhakra Nangal, where we could start getting water. And in CSIR labs, we made India's first ever tractor. The Punjab Tractors Limited, the Swaraj tractor that you see, or the Sonalika tractor that you see in the field today, was made in a CSIR lab. And as the tractor rolled out, as the dwarf variety of wheat was adopted to India, as our labs in Hyderabad, the Indians of Chemical Technology made agri-pesticides, and as we improved irrigation, today, when the world is facing acute shortage of food because of the Russia-Ukraine war, Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has offered the world that India can supply food to the entire world. In 1965, we had a begging bowl in our hand. We went to US asking for wheat. Today, we can supply food. We can fill up stomachs of all empty people, hungry people from our own grains. Amazing. Let me tell you a story of milk, the infant food. Milk, of course, in India we use mostly buffalo milk. In most of the overseas countries, Western countries, they use cow milk. We had a huge problem of infants dying because they were not getting proper nutrition or something. And our challenge was, how do we get milk to the small kids, the infants or the children, small babies actually. Many times because their mothers would not get lactating milk. A gentleman called Varghese Kurian, he came back to India. He was in US and he was in Canada. He came back to India and decided that he is going to generate a cooperative in Gujarat where all the milk producers can give him milk at their locations. That milk can be transported to central locations and from there it can be distributed all over. But there is one problem. Milk can be transported in cold, but it would be better if we can convert milk into milk powder. Because the infants, if you have to actually feed a hungry child with milk, let us say in Punjab or Haryana or Himachal Pradesh, and the milk is coming from Gujarat, there is no way that you can transport the milk in cold all the way up to Himachal Pradesh. So we had to make milk powder. 1957, India's Commerce Ministry set up a committee. How do we convert milk into milk powder? We didn't have a very strong foundation in science and technology still. We invited experts from overseas. One Mr. William Riddett came from New Zealand and some people came from Ireland and Scotland. They wrote down in a report to Government of India that buffalo milk cannot be converted into milk powder. It's a report to Government of India saying that buffalo milk cannot be converted to milk powder. Government of India asked CSIR, can you convert buffalo milk to milk powder? And indeed, our scientists and our engineers and technologists took up the challenge. And why was buffalo milk not being able to convert into milk? Because buffalo milk is high in fat. Cow milk is not very high in fat. Buffalo milk is very high in fat. So our scientists at that time, Varghese Kurian from Gujarat, from Amul, what we today call as Amul, he and the scientists from the Central Food Technology Research Institute in Mysore, they worked together. They removed fat from the milk and the rest of the milk they could convert it into milk powder. the fat could be converted into butter. What you eat today, Amul butter, is that fat that actually comes out of the buffalo milk. What you eat today, milk powder, any one of us get milk powder in the grocery stores? That milk powder is generated from the fat-free milk. But how do you make sure that that milk powder is ready to be consumed? Is it good to be consumed? Will it not create any harmful effect on the body? Once again, Verghese Kurian, along with the scientists of Central Food Technology Research Institute, they went to Christian Medical College, Vellore, conducted clinical trials, CSIR funded that particular clinical trial and showed that milk powder is good to do. Today, wherever you go, we actually see the milk powder. Have you not seen milk powder? In our times, our mothers used to buy milk powder in a tin, right? That tin, when the milk powder was over, mother used to use the tin for storing grains, tur dal, moong dal or something. And if the tins actually rusted, we used to store washing powder in that. Many of us actually have that milk powder cans in our houses still. But that's how India made infant food. And then as soon as the milk was able to be converted into milk powder, we started from the milk basin of the country, mostly Gujarat and Maharashtra, we started converting milk, transporting milk all over India, whether be it Assam, whether be it Bengal, whether be it Himachal Pradesh. And today, the infant death rate because of lack of availability of food is much, much lower than what it was in 1970s. Shouldn't we be proud of this? We started our space program in 1970s. When the space program started, some of the first rockets that were transported to the rocket launch sites were carried on bullock carts. Bullock carts carrying rockets to the space launching site where the space rocket would be launched. Many of our first launches were unsuccessful. When we were students doing PhD, most of the space launches were unsuccessful. All the world newspapers were ridiculing India that you are aspiring to be a space power, you want to launch rockets in the space, but you carry them on bullock cart to the rocket launch. How is it possible? On today's date, when India launches a rocket, 50 to 100 agencies around the world line up saying that please send our satellite also through your rocket. Countries around the world line up with India today that if you are going to launch a rocket, please send our satellite on your rocket. 1980s, all the countries were ridiculing us that you cannot launch a rocket. Haven't we made good progress? Let me come to the recent times. Right? I mean, I have told you a lot of stories about 1947 to 1980s. But today, as the world is staring at many, many difficult problems, one of the problems that we are facing, very acute problem, and that's the problem for your generation to solve in the coming 20 years, is reduction in our, what we use today as fossil fuel. How do we reduce our dependence on fossil fuel is a major, major challenge, right? Almost all of our fuel that we use either are coal or petroleum and natural gas. That is all comes from fossils that we dig deep into the ground and extract them from there. We want to reduce our dependence on that. And one way that we want to do is we want to use agri residues to convert that into a fuel-like thing. Diesel, petrol, kerosene or whatever. Airlines run on what is called as biojet fuel. All the airlines that you see, they run on biojet fuels. India took up a challenge about 5 years ago that agricultural residues can be converted into biojet fuel. Our chemical engineers, they took up a challenge that agricultural residues can be converted into biojet fuel. Believe it or not, 2 years ago, we demonstrated to the world that agricultural residues could fly a flight of spice jet from Dehradun to Delhi 2 years ago. Last year, in the Republic Day parade, some of the Air Force planes, the AN-32s, they flew on biojet fuel. And today, in November, 6 months ago, the regulatory authorities have given clearance for all the biojet fuel that can be generated from our laboratories like Indian Institute of Petroleum in Dehradun, they are fit to be used into the aeroplanes. India became only the second country in the world to have its own made biojet fuel. Second country in the world. That's amazing. The kind of progress that we have been making is absolutely amazing. But now the time has come for us to be first in the world. And today, in the afternoon, Dr. Somnath and Satish Shetty Garu, both of them will tell you what are our dreams to be number one in the world. And people of my generation are looking forward to your generation to take us to that particular position. India has to be number one, no less. In any science, any technology that we develop, it would be the first in the class. What we do for the sustainable world of tomorrow has to be the first that is generated in India and then adopted anywhere in the world. That's our dream. And that dream, we are looking forward to your generation to fulfill that dream. Our ancestors, the Bhabas, the Sarabhais, the Satish Dhawans and Dr. Kalams brought us to a particular position where we are today. I showed you some examples, I told you some examples, but now our aspirations are to be a Vishwaguru. And to become Vishwaguru, we need people like you, people who have a lot of energy that we have seen in the hall today, people who have a lot of enthusiasm, and people are working on problem-oriented work to solve those problems of the future today. If you are able to do that, I have no doubt, I have full confidence in your generation that you will take us to that pole position in 20 or 25 years from now. We are celebrating 75 years of independence, Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav. In 2047, we will celebrate 100 years of our independence. Our Honorable Prime Minister has already laid out a vision for the country for 2047. And many of us are in Delhi right now, are in the process of writing that vision document for 2047. And that vision would be to make India a real Vishwaguru. And that mantle is upon you to carry forward. I appeal to all the students in this audience to commit yourself to make India number one in future. Bring to the value your hard work, bring to the table your sincerity, bring to the table your intelligence, which we are no less than anywhere in the world, and bring to the world innovations that Professor Murthy also mentioned in his speech. If you are able to combine all of these together, hard work, sincerity, intelligence, and working for a cause, I have no doubt that in 2047, India would be the number one country in the world, what we were there in 18th century once again. Thank you all very much.
Go for Q&A question. 3 questions, 3 guests.
I request volunteers to bring in the mics.
Mics.
Thank you, sir.